Hi, this is Steve, K8BZ. In this video, we're going to demonstrate how to set up auto forwarding of messages from one bulletin board to another. This is one of probably the most powerful features that you can use in packet radio. It's built into Kantronics TNCs and many other TNCs as well. But we'll be demonstrating how to do that with the Kantronics command set. And we'll also show how that works in a emergency communications network where messages going outside the network, if they're put into National Traffic System format, can automatically be forwarded to the National Traffic System liaison station to continue that forwarding process to their destination. That saves slot time, so the NTS liaison doesn't have to be assigned a slot time to check into the network to pick up the messages going outside the network. They'll just automatically be sent to him whenever they're left on the bulletin board in the network. So that frees up a little slot time in a busy network. So to demonstrate this, we need let me get back to the PowerPoint. To demonstrate this, we need to set up certain commands in the TNC. The first command that we talked about back in the command set is the H-text command, or the hierarchical text. The generic version of that in Michigan is mi.usa.noam. If you're in another state, just substitute your state. If you're outside of the United States, you'll have to check with packet operators locally to see what that should be in your location. The next command is the PB forward command. The PB forward command tells the bulletin board what station to forward messages to and how often to forward them. We're going to set our PB forward command to forward to K8BZ-1 after 1 hour. Now that doesn't mean it waits an hour to forward the message. It forwards them immediately after you disconnect, when you leave an eligible message to be forwarded on the bulletin board, and then every hour after that. So anytime a message is left on the bulletin board that's eligible to be forwarded, the bulletin board will attempt to forward that message immediately after that station disconnects from the bulletin board, and every 1 hour afterwards. The next forward-related command is the PB kill forward command, or the abbreviated version is PBK. This determines whether the forwarded message is killed off the bulletin board after it's forwarded. In a normal emergency communications network, this would be left on. You leave it on because we don't want messages accumulating on the bulletin board that have already been delivered or forwarded. If those are left on the bulletin board in a busy network, there can be a large number of messages accumulating on the bulletin board, and every time someone connects in their slot time and lists the messages, it's going to list long lists of messages that have already been delivered or forwarded. So for that reason, in a normal network, we'd want the PBK, or the PB kill command, turned on, so it will delete these messages after they're forwarded. For our demonstration, though, we are going to leave that command off because I want to log into the bulletin boards and show you what happens to the messages after they're forwarded. So I don't want them killed for our demonstration, so we'll leave that on for our demo. The next is the PB header. I think the use of the word header was an unfortunate choice, but that's what the TNC manufacturers used for this. Traffic handlers generally think of a message header as the first line of a formal message that has the message number and the station of origin and place of origin and so on. Header for packet radio forwarding purposes means the forwarding route, or the forwarding list, the list of stations that have handled this message in the automatic forwarding process. Now, we want the PB header command turned on. That saves the routing information for each station that forwards a message as it goes through the automatic forwarding process. The next is the PB hold command. Now, What this does is if it's on, any messages that are eligible to be forwarded won't be forwarded until the SYSOP releases them. They'll automatically be placed on hold on the bulletin board. So if you put a message on you want to forward, you can address the message in the correct way, put it on the bulletin board, and if the SYSOP doesn't check into that bulletin board to release that hold for 5 days, it'll sit there for 5 days and won't go anywhere. In an emergency communications network, the only operators that will be participating in the network will be trained operators that are authorized by the county amateur radio emergency coordinator, and he is going to have confidence that they're only going to put messages on the bulletin board that have appropriate content. And either the emergency coordinator or the designated SYSOP is going to set up the forwarding process, so it's going to save the routing information. So if someone gets a little off track, they'll be able to determine who it is that got off track and get the problem corrected. So in an emergency communications network, we're not going to leave the PB hold command on. We're going to leave it off because we want those messages to forward as soon as possible, as soon as the station disconnects. So we're going to turn that off. Now, if you're in your home station and for casual operating, if you temporarily enable forwarding on your home TNC, you probably want to leave the PB hold command on until you get used to who will be using the forwarding capabilities and make sure that they're using them appropriately. But I don't think that's ever been a problem in packet radio. But for our purposes, we're going to leave that off so the messages will automatically forward. The next is the PB reverse, or PB reverse forward. If forwarding is enabled in a bulletin board, after the eligible messages are forwarded, if the PB reverse command is on, then that bulletin board will look for any messages addressed to the bulletin board and reverse forward them back to the bulletin board. This command should be used with caution because something that can happen is that if you're practicing auto forwarding and setting that up on your bulletin board, you may accidentally create a nested loop, which would mean your bulletin board would forward a message to another bulletin board, and that bulletin board would forward it back to you because the PB reverse command is on, and then yours would forward it back, and it would continue around that process, creating a duplicate message each time it does in each bulletin board. And if that happens, and then those bulletin boards are all remote bulletin boards, that is a hard process to interrupt. If you're going to practice setting up auto forwarding, make sure that you start practicing setting it up on your home station where you can lay hands on the TNC that you're using, especially if you use the PB reverse option. That way you can simply reach up and turn off the TNC and interrupt that nested loop where it continues to forward this message back and forth between the two bulletin boards. If you set it up between remote stations and that starts, it's more difficult to get stopped. You have to remote in and change the commands while it's trying to forward messages, and that could be a very difficult, long process. So that is a handy option. I've used it in casual operating, but for the purposes of an emergency communications network, these are going to be one-way messages going outside the network. So we're going to leave the PB reverse option off. In an actual emergency communications network, the NTS liaison would be responsible for bringing messages from outside the network and putting them in the network, and they can do that during their designated slot time, so we don't need the PB reverse option turned on. Now, it's in order for messages to be forwarded in an automatic forwarding system, they have to be properly addressed. The to message field must contain the @ symbol. If it doesn't contain the @ symbol, the message is not eligible for forwarding, and it'll just stay on the bulletin board in the local network. So if you wanted a message to be forwarded, a personal message could be addressed, for example, to SP for send private, rather, not personal. Send private message to K8BZ at K8BZ. If we just address it to SPK8BZ, it would remain on the bulletin board and wouldn't be forwarded automatically to the next bulletin board. Another way that messages can be addressed is if it's a formal National Traffic System message, it would be ST for send traffic to the zip code at National Traffic System and then the state designator. Outpost Packet Message Manager, when you create a National Traffic System and Outpost Packet Message Manager, that is how the messages will be addressed on the bulletin board. It'll be addressed to send traffic to zip code at National Traffic System and then the state designator. Those messages would be eligible to be forwarded if the commands in the previous slide were appropriately set up. Now, there's an important FCC rule that you need to be aware of if you're going to set up automatic message forwarding. FCC rules allow automatic message forwarding to take place within the restrictions of your particular license class. The part that's important to note is, the first part that's important to note is that the station that's responsible for any rules violations in the content of a message that's forwarded automatically is the station that first puts the message in the automatic forwarding system. The stations that automatically forward that message are not responsible for any illegal content in the message that they automatically forward, with two exceptions. If they become aware of illegal content in the message and they allow it to continue to be forwarded, then they assume responsibility for the rules violation. The other important thing is highlighted in red. If you are going to participate in an automatic forwarding system and you are the control operator, you must be able to authenticate the identity of the station from which you accept the message. If you can't authenticate the identity of that station, then you accept responsibility for any rules violations that are associated with the message that's being forwarded. Now, the way I am going to show you how to set up auto forwarding, it will automatically take care of the authentication process. Again, keep in mind that all of these videos are for emergency communications purposes. It's always assuming that the participants are going to be trained operators, that they are going to be authorized by the county emergency coordinator, and also that, as it was described in the previous video, describing the connect list, access to the bulletin board can be restricted to authorized operators only by using the connect list command and specifying which stations will be allowed to connect to the bulletin board. That can be turned on when the emergency communications begins and remain on as long as the emergency communications network needs to be in operation, and then it can be turned off afterwards, allowing any licensed amateur to access the bulletin board and use it during the normal course of amateur activity. So we do know that only authorized people that have had the required training will be using this, so we can let these messages automatically forward, and we will know that the authentication process is occurring because it's going to be properly set up as I'm about to describe. So let's show how that can be done. We're going to go to the dumb terminal. Let me clear the screen. Now I'm actually going to set up auto forwarding from another station to my home station. Now to do that, I'm going to have to remote in to this other station and set the commands that were previously described. So we're going to have to connect to this station, and we will authenticate it with the remote text command. Okay, now I'll let you know that I clipped out the part where I had to type in the remote text in order to gain remote access to the command set in this bulletin board. But after doing that, we have the remote command prompt, which is the word prompt followed by a colon. and we need to check the settings of the commands that were described in the PowerPoint slides. Now the first one was the htext command. That's the hierarchical text, and we'll see that that's correctly set. The generic version of that is Michigan.USA.North America. This has the optional, more specific location that starts with the pound sign Northeast Michigan.Michigan.USA.North America. The PB forward command is already set to forward to K8BZ after 1 hour. Now the number you put in there is always hours. Always represents hours. Now the after, let me first show you the format info for the PBF command from the TNC. The PB forward command, you put in the bulletin board and then via, then there could be more than one vias. Now that would specify digipeaters if you need them. So this bulletin board is going to have a direct path to my bulletin board, so I don't need to use any digipeaters, so there's no via in here. Now you can use either of these words, every or after. I use after because after means after you disconnect from the bulletin board, it's going to forward the eligible messages, and then every hour after that it will try to forward if it wasn't successful the first time. If you use the word every, it won't try to forward after you disconnect from the bulletin board. It's going to wait until that hour is up, and then it's going to try. So we want it to go right away. So we want it to start forwarding after we disconnect. And the N represents the number of hours that it will attempt. So the PBF command is set to attempt to forward after we disconnect and every hour thereafter. The PB kill command to kill the messages is set to off. So the messages are going to remain on the bulletin board after they're forwarded. This is only for our demonstration purposes, as I described. If this were an actual emergency network, we would turn that on so these messages would be deleted from the bulletin board and they wouldn't accumulate on the bulletin board. The PB header command is on. Again, remember, header in this case means the routing information. The routing list of stations will be saved in the message, and it will be forwarded with the messages as they go from one station to another. The PB hold command is going to be turned off. The PB hold command again means the messages will be held on the bulletin board until the SYSOP goes in and releases the hold and allows them to be forwarded. And since we have control over who the operators are and we know they're properly trained, we're turning the PB hold command off so the messages will begin to forward automatically. The PB reverse command is set to off. We are not going to request reverse forwards back into the network for an emergency communications operation purpose. That could have use in other operations, but for our purposes, we're going to leave that command off. So this is all set. This is the W8GDW packet station. The BBS call sign, whoops, is W8GDW-1. So all of these commands, as displayed on the screen right now, are how they are set in this packet station that I'm connected to by radio. One other thing I need to demonstrate before we move on to creating a message to be forwarded. We talked about how to enable forwarding using the PBF command. Right now the PBF command is set to forward to K8BZ-1 after 1 hour. When the need to forward is done and you don't need to auto forward anymore, you turn the auto forwarding off by setting the PBF command to after 0. You can change the call sign, or you can make the call sign none if you want. Let me show you. Right now the current setting is to forward to K8BZ-1 after 0. The 0 means it's disabled. If you further want to just remove the call sign, yeah, it's not necessary if it's disabled, but you can. Set it to PBF none, and it recognizes none as no call sign after 0. So now we'll display the current setting, and the current setting is PBF none after 0, which means it's disabled. So with that, let's go to Packet Message Manager, and we will create a message and demonstrate auto forwarding. Now we're going to create a National Traffic System message, and let's use a tactical call sign. I'm going to do a Control-I and bring up the identification window. And you can see the user call sign is our FCC issued call sign, K8BZ. The option to use the tactical call sign is down here, and we're going to use the tactical call sign EOC for the Emergency Operations Center. Now we also want to make sure that we have the correct bulletin board selected, so we're going to do a Control-B to bring up the bulletin board setup window. And if you have more than one bulletin board saved, make sure you have the correct bulletin board. And in our case, we're going to use the Gladwin Aries Races bulletin board, which is W8GDW-1. That's the packet station that we set up the forwarding commands in. So we're all set to go there. Now we're going to use the new button up here to create a new message. And we want this to be a National Traffic System message, so we're going to click the National Traffic System button. And that will bring up the NTS Message Maker window. Now this was already described in a previous video, so I'm not going to go into detail about how this works in this video. But we're going to let Outpost assign it the next consecutive message number here. We're going to keep the precedence routine just for our demonstration. We're not going to do any handling instructions. The station of origin, even though we're using a tactical call sign, it's going to put our FCC issued call sign in the message for the station of origin. We're not going to use an ARL numbered radiogram, so we're going to uncheck that box. The check of the message will be calculated by Outpost after we complete the message. The place of origin will be will self-complete. It will be whatever you put in your last message. If you change your place of origin, if you move to a remote location, it will automatically save the last one that was put in the message form. The message date and time is going to self-complete. That's going to be taken from your computer system clock. It's why you need to make sure you have an accurate clock in your computer that you're using. And we'll just create a fictitious addressee. Stan Smith, call sign W1 WWW, address 1234 5th Street, Big City, Michigan 48484, and a fictitious phone number 989-555-2424. Email, we'll just leave that blank and just put in just some test text. Okay, now if I click the check button, it will do two things. It's going to arrange the text of the message in 5 characters per line, and it will automatically count the groups in the message and fill in the check field. So once all that is done, I can save the message. Then there'll be just a brief period of time here while it puts it in the message form in Outpost, and here we are. It shows that it's an NTS message here in the yellow bar, and it's going to send it to the zip code at NTS Michigan. Remember, in order for a message to auto forward, it's got to be addressed to something at the @ symbol and something else. Outpost automatically addresses the message in a format that is recognized by full service bulletin boards that do auto forwarding. Even though what we're doing is a limited service bulletin board, it still has pretty powerful capabilities. And then the actual format down here, the NTS message format. So if we click send, that message now went to the out tray, and you see it here in the list in the out tray. We can open the message if we want and look at it again. Now, I don't have slot times programmed in this for the demonstration, so I'm just going to do a force a send receive, and we're going to send that to the bulletin board. I'm going to move this down here just a little. Now we're going to watch that message be sent to the bulletin board, and it's sending right now. This is actually going out over the radio. And then it will go through the list routine for looking for new messages for the EOC. I probably have it also set to download your own National Traffic System messages. Yes, it does. Now it's gonna recopy or download the message that we just uploaded to the bulletin board, and there was the chime tone that you get that indicates receiving a new message. Now, as soon as it's done over here, now I'm gonna minimize that and get it out of the way. As soon as it's done, W8GDW automatically connects to automatically connects to K8BZ-1 and is forwarding that message. Now that's already been done. K8BZ-1 in turn was programmed to automatically forward it to WB8EOC-1, and that's been completed. WB8EOC-1 was programmed to automatically forward the same message to W8DMI-1, and that's in the process right now. So just in these few seconds, that message has gone through 4 stations. W8DMI-1 was programmed to automatically forward it to W8COP-1. Now those 2 stations are out of range, so I can't monitor them on the monitor screen. But we're going to connect to them and verify that all this happened. So just that quick, that one test message has been automatically forwarded through 5 packet stations. And let's take a look at all of them. We're going to connect to the first one, W8GDW-1. And we're going to do a list traffic. We don't need to list all the messages. We're just looking for this traffic message. And there it is. Now this is the first station that I put the message in from Outpost Packet Message Manager. You can see the status, the message type and status is here. The type is T for traffic, and F shows that it's been forwarded. Now normally we would have the PB kill command turned on, so it would have, after it forwarded this message, it would have automatically deleted it off the bulletin board. But I wanted it left on so we could demonstrate. Now we can read that message using the read command 213. So we're going to read message number 213, and there's our message. It remained on the bulletin board after it forwarded it. This is the path of the message. Right now the path is just one station. It's W8GDW. Something else I wanted to show. The message was from the tactical call sign EOC, but the NTS header is going to show the FCC call sign K8BZ. So the authentication occurs, and we can verify that in 2 ways. We can verify it because the FCC issued call sign is included in the NTS message header, and in the packet header, and again, header has 2 different meanings here. The packet header we can see by using the RH command instead of the read, just the read command. We're going to read it with headers. That's what the RH command is. So we're going to read with headers 213. And we'll show you how the authentication is automatic if the auto forwarding is set up in this manner. Now I'm going to scroll back up, and we're going to look at the forwarding path here where it just gave you the call sign. And that's useful information. Here's even more useful information. If you read it with headers, it's going to save and relay the header information. This R means the message was received at this date and time. The date is in the format of year, month, and day. So it's 2016-04 for April and 22 for the 22nd day of April 2016. And it was received at 10:28 local time in the W8GDW bulletin board, And this is the time that's taken from the TNC clock. So you want to make sure your TNC clocks are set to a reasonably accurate time. This shows that it was given message number 213 in the W8GDW bulletin board. And up here you can see that's message number 213. And then it gives you the hierarchical address information of Northeast Michigan.Michigan.USA.North America. So that is how the authentication takes place that fulfills the FCC requirement for authenticating the station that you received an automatically forwarded message from. Does it in two ways: through the header forwarding path information that's transferred with the message, and from the actual FCC call sign of the originating station that's put in the header of the message, even if you are using a tactical call sign. Here, we're using the tactical call sign in the packet network, but it puts your FCC issued call sign in the National Traffic System header of the message down here. So we're going to disconnect from this bulletin board, and we're going to look at the next one. The next one is just my home station, so I'm going to connect to K8BZ-1. This is all internal. This does not go over the radio. This is all through an internal connection. So I'm going to list traffic, and I'll reduce the font a little bit so we don't have this wrapping around. This is our message. It's number 59. So let's read number 59 here with headers, RH59. And the forwarding path information now in the packet headers shows two stations. The most recent one was K8BZ that gave it message number 59 that we can see up here, and the hierarchical address for that, and it was received from W8GDW, and it gives the date and time. Now these times, again, come from the TNC clock. There may be some variance there depending on whether the SYSOPs for these various bulletin boards occasionally check their clock and adjust it accordingly. So let's go on and look up at the next station that this was forwarded to. It was WB80OC-1. And we'll do LT to list traffic. And it's message 629, so let's read with headers 629. Here's the routing information with headers for the three stations that message went through. Now you can see here slight variation in the TNC clocks. This one was earlier by 1 minute than the other two, but that's pretty good for our purposes. And there are two other stations this message relayed through. The next one I can't reach directly, so I'm going to have to connect via a digipeater. It's W8DMI-1, and I have to connect via the digi alias EOC. And we'll list traffic. And we're going to read with headers 145. It's the same message. And since we're connected through a digipeater, it takes a little bit longer. There's the header information for the four stations now that this message relayed through. Whoops. Still a little bit of variation in the system clocks. It still shows the messages from the tactical call EOC, but FCC issued call sign is in the NTS header for the message. Now the final station, I have to use two digipeaters to get through to the final station. Final station is W8COP-1, and I have to connect via EOC, digi alias EOC, and digi alias DMI. So there's two digis in this path. We could also connect via nodes, connecting to the individual nodes, but these paths have been pretty reliable just using two digipeaters. So we'll list traffic. And 2 digipeters in the path makes it go a little bit slower. Now, let's look at the message type and status. For the message type, it's just traffic. There's no status here. Now, the previous messages, if we looked up here in the last station, W8DMI, the type is traffic, the status is forwarded. Now, W8COP is the last one in the forwarding path. W8COP was not programmed to forward this message anywhere. So there's no status displayed, because there's no need for the status to be displayed, because it's not set up to forward this anywhere. Now, let's read this with headers. It's message number 122. And we'll get the entire forwarding path information that this message took from the first station on through the three relay stations to the final destination. And here it is. We'll wait for the message to finish so it doesn't scroll up the screen while we talk about it. And again, with 2 digis in the path, it just takes a little bit longer. There we are. So here's the entire packet header forwarding path information. And there is some issue here with the TNC clocks needing to be set more accurately. This really probably only took 1 minute to get from the originating station W8GDW all the way up to W8COP. It really didn't take this 12 minutes or so to get up there. It got up there within 1 minute. So this shows you how messages can be set up. Now, all of this can be done by one operator with the required knowledge, can do all this remotely from a single location and control how messages need to be forwarded based on the needs. And it's modifiable at any time. We can remote into these stations and change all this, and we will, well, I guess I don't want to demonstrate that. It would disclose too many connect text options. But when I'm all done here, I'm going to remote back into all of these stations, turn the forwarding option off, and they'll just be back in normal operation. But you can see how, using a little bit of imagination in given situations, how this might be useful. Now, for the most part, all of this is designed around using this information in an emergency communications network. The scenario I stuck with through this whole thing is that there's a local communications emergency where the EOC, a shelter, an incident command, a staging area all have to be activated, and that there's an NTS liaison that takes traffic going outside the network. So for the most part, you'd probably only need the auto forwarding to go to one station. But if the National Traffic System liaison is quite a distance away, you might have to go through 2 stations to get to him, so you could relay it through 2, or you could connect via a digipeater using the PBF command. You could put a digipeater in the path if you wanted, so it would just be relayed by a single station through a digipeater, or you could relay it through multiple stations if need be. And then it could be modified at any time. If that's NTS liaison went off duty and it had to go to a different station, the SYSOP would remotely log in and modify the forwarding path to go to the new NTS liaison in the next operational period. In a normal emergency communications network, whether it's voice or some other digital network of some kind, typically it involves, to pass a message, involves 3 live operators. It involves the live operator of the sending station, the live operator of the receiving station, and a net control station to coordinate all that activity. In a properly set up packet radio emergency communications network, 2 of those live operators, the need for 2 of them is eliminated. Each station is assigned their slot time by the SYSOP. They send all their traffic and receive all their traffic without the need to involve the receiver and without the need to involve a net control. Traffic flows very quickly. For people who wonder about, well, you have to wait for your slot time before you can get in and send your emergency message if it's an emergency. And most of the time our traffic is for supporting communications for an emergency operation. It's not necessarily actually for a life and death situation, but it doesn't matter if you're comparing it to other modes, whether it be a voice network or another digital network. You're going to have to log in, list your traffic, wait for the net control to set up a receiving station for your traffic, tell you to pass your traffic on the net frequency or QSY to another frequency. No two stations in any mode can pass their traffic on the same frequency at the same time. And even packet radio has the capability to do that. Two stations can, in fact, pass their traffic at the same time on the same frequency using packet. The path slows down if that happens, and it's not the recommended way to do it, but it can be done. So my hope here is that some of the people involved in emergency communications in their local jurisdictions will see some of these videos and decide that this is a pretty good way to go in utilizing packet radio. Begin to put some of this into use in their local areas. Packet radio has been underutilized for the most part, given its capabilities, and a little assistance might help get that started if the emergency coordinators can either take that responsibility themselves or delegate that to someone with some packet experience that would want to begin becoming familiar with some of these SYSOP procedures and coordinating and training some of the local operators. Having the EOC packet station doesn't really do anything if you don't have packet operators that use it. Putting a packet bulletin board at the EOC doesn't do anything if you don't have packet operators that can send and receive messages to and from the bulletin board. So that is an area that needs to be explored, and hopefully some operators will step forward and take an interest in this and want to begin using packet a little more in your area. So again, thanks for watching. If you have any questions or problems, please feel free to email me at k8bz@arrl.net, and I'd be happy to work with you to resolve any issues you have. Thank you.